My elders, brothers and sisters, learned scholars, Salamun Alaikum, peace be upon you all. It gives me utmost pleasure to welcome you all here today for our annual Interfaith Breakfast. This year we also have the pleasure and excitement of opening our new extension building, the Baab-Ul-Ilm Learning Centre. It's truly inspiring to see so many of you having taken time out of your busy lives to come and spend an evening with us. We are honoured to have an eclectic gathering of guests here today, from the regular Baab-Ul-Ilm community, renowned scholars, to the West Yorkshire Police, local councillors, our friends and brothers from the Islamic Centre at Spencer Place, Sinai Synagogue, Leeds Faith Forum, Concord Interfaith Fellowship, teachers from Wigton Moor Primary School, as well as those that have made this building quite possible, quite literally, the architect Robert Tinsley and contractors Majid Khan and Melton Wellington. Some of you are old friends and you know us well. For others, this might be your first time that you've honoured us with your presence, and we pray not the last. In a time when the focus seems all too often to be on the small differences between us, we come together to share our commonality, to sit with each other, to eat with each other, to share stories, cultures, traditions, and to learn about one another. Laying the bricks for a building is the easy part. I know Majid, the contractor, will disagree with me on this, but this is how communities are built. This is the only way forward. So I thank you all in attendance for leading the way and making today a special event. Before we move on with the programme, just a couple of points to mention. You may have noticed that some card and marker pens have been distributed. I'd like you to hang on to these because we'd like to capture some of your cardinal thoughts and reflections during the programme. Simply jot down any reflection, and towards the end of proceedings, we can take some pictures and, with your permission, use them on our website and social media platforms. Secondly, for our brothers who will be opening their fast at sunset, which I believe today is at 9:29 p.m, there will be some dates being passed around for your convenience. So, let us proceed. I would first like to call on Brother Zahir Walji to recite for us an excerpt from the Holy Quran. For Muslims, the sound of Quranic recitation is the predominant and most immediate means of contact with the Word of God. The sound of recitation is far more than listening to just the words. It is a core of religious devotion, the sanctioning spirit of much cultural and social life, and a valued art form in its own right. Participation in recitation, either as a reciter or a listener, is in itself an act of worship. For the sound is basic to a Muslim sense of religion and invokes a set of meanings that transcend any one particular occasion. So if I could invite Brother Zahir to come forward and recite a passage for us.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يسخر قوم من قوم لا يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم ولا نساء من نساء عسى أن يكن خيرا منهن ولا تلمزوا أنفسكم ولا تنابزوا عقاب بئس الاسم الفسوق بعد الإيمان ومن لم يتب فأولئك هم الظالمون صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد. In the name of Allah, the most kind, the most merciful. The translation of this verse is on the slide, so I would not like to repeat the translation because you can read it yourself from the screen. The verse makes reference to numerous factors including conflict, mocking and belittling others. According to Quranic exegesis, this verse was revealed when the evil act of ridiculing one another was being practiced. I would not like to go into the details because of time, but I would like to state that this verse is not specific, but it imparts a general rule forbidding believers not to commit such evil deeds, both historically at the time of revelation and at present time. The blessed verse implies the importance of a healthy environment and impedes social conflicts. Furthermore, it encourages solidarity and respect for others through a non-judgmental approach and learning through diversity, because the person or institution that you may be bullying, belittling or ridiculing may be better than you. The message from this verse is that when a group hurts another group, or a believer hurts another believer or an unbeliever, or commits this sin, or if I may use the word loosely, criminal activity, or engages in this criminal activity, even through facial expressions or exposes the faults of others, his status changes to that of a wrong and evil doer. In conclusion, ridiculing others is apparently one sin, but it actually consists of numerous sins, like belittling, humiliating, exposing faults, causing discord, backbiting, hatred, contention, intrigue, and causing sarcastic remarks upon others. Sadaqallahu al-Aliyyul Azim.
Thank you, Brother Zahir, for that eloquent recitation. Just to enlighten you, between speakers, for those of you who don't know, you may hear the congregation saying the words in Arabic, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. These are not Quranic verses. This is a supplication, an invocation that we often say, and it means, oh God, please bless Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. So just to enlighten you as to what is being said. So thank you, Brother Zahir, for that recitation and interpretation. Next, we move on to the keynote address of today's evening. I'm honored to welcome Sheikh Muhammad Al-Hilli to the Baab-Ul-Ilm Centre, and I believe this is for the first time. Sheikh Muhammad is an internationally renowned speaker and researcher. He completed his degree from the International College for Islamic Sciences, having formerly studied disciplines such as theology, Quranic exegesis, logic, principles of Islamic jurisprudence, law, history, Arabic morphology, as well as the sciences of hadith, the sayings of the Prophet. He is a teacher at the seminary program at the Islamic College in London. He has also completed an MA in Islamic Studies from Middlesex University. And his current work includes facilitating guided tours of the Holy Lands, providing insightful social commentary on current events in the Middle East, and encouraging both intra- and interfaith discussion. It is with great honor that I request Sheikh Hilli to come forward and enlighten us today with his words.
In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, I begin with the name of the Lord of Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. And I send the choices of God's blessings and salutations upon all of his prophets, including the final Prophet Muhammad and his holy, pure progeny. My dear, respected friends, brothers and sisters, I greet you with the Islamic greeting of Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings be upon you all, and a very good evening. Peace, love, and mercy. 3 words that are intertwined within the presence and the very existence of every human being. We crave it, we desire it, we want it. Each and every human being wants to live in a peaceful lifestyle, surrounded by loving, compassionate, kind, and caring people. We as human beings have been engineered to be craving stability, craving love, craving a sense of coexistence, respect for each other. What we find is that most of us would love to be continuously bombarded with news of what's happening around us that is associated with peace, that is associated with love and mercy. But of course, that's not the case in the majority of the times. That when we pick up our remote control or our smartphones and we start to read what's happening around the world, we start to see what's happening sometimes around us. News that is presented before us might not necessarily be good. And sometimes even the news that's good can be perceived otherwise. I remember, just to share this interesting story with you, that there was a man who was taking his wife to the local hospital because she was about to give birth. She was in labor, and he was rushing to hospital to get her there. So when he gets there, he says to the midwife, he says to her, I'm not going to go into the delivery suite. I'm going to wait in the waiting area. And I want you to come out and tell me whenever my wife gives birth. Then I'll go and see her. He sits next to 2 other men. These 2 other men are also waiting for this great news. The news that their partners or their wives have given birth. So he's sitting there, the 3 of them, waiting and waiting until the news comes out. After a while, the midwife comes out and says to the first man who's sitting there, great news! He says, what? She says, your wife has given birth, but not just to 1 child, 2 twins. He stands up, ecstatic, looks at the 2 other men who have now become friends because they've spent the time talking to each other. And he says to the 2 other men, I'm excited for 2 reasons. Number 1, I'm blessed with 2 kids. But number 2, it's so much of a coincidence because I work for a hotel chain known as Doubletree. He goes away and he's nowhere to be seen. After a while, the lady, the midwife, comes out and says to the second person, great news! Your wife has given birth. He says, great. Is it a boy or a girl? She stands there. She says, I don't know how to tell you this, but your wife has given birth to triplets. He says, amazing. This can't be happening. He looks at the third man and says, do you know who I work for? I work for a mobile phone company called 3. He disappears. Now the third man, this man that had driven his wife, is seen walking back and forth, sweating profusely, agitated, anxious. People are looking at him. Someone comes to him and says, are you okay? He says, no, I'm not okay. I work for 7-Up. Sometimes news that we receive may not necessarily be good. Yes, although it may be apparently the case. See, as Muslims, I'll tell you this to the Muslim community and to our respected friends as well, that I remember having been raised in this country in the early 90s when I was maybe a young kid. My father used to say to me sometimes, today there is a piece of news in the Independent or the Telegraph about Muslims. We've got to buy the newspaper. It's rare that Muslims are mentioned. So I remember I used to wake up on a Saturday or a Sunday and go to the local newsagent and buy the newspaper just because there's a little bit of news about Muslims. Wow, they would be mentioned. Today, I don't think we need to buy anything. It's all there, and we're there nearly every single day. But of course, not for the right reasons. And the depiction of Muslims and generally what is happening around the world leaves a lot to be desired as far as the media and the perception of the world regarding Muslims are concerned and the religion of Islam. And so you find that there is a lot of negativity associated with the followers of this faith. Let me give you a few statistics. In June this year, YouGov conducted a poll in this country. 6,640 people were asked to associate terms with people. So they asked them, what term do you associate with Muslims? And the first thing that came out was what? Terror. Terrorism. You look at BBC, they conducted a survey after the horrific Charlie Hebdo massacre. And they asked Muslims, how do you feel about what happened? They asked them, are you loyal to this country? They asked them, would you abide by British law? 95% of the 1,000 Muslims who were asked by the BBC said we are loyal to the United Kingdom. 95%. To the extent that some analysts say, I don't think we can find a group of people as loyal to this country as the Muslims. Then 93% would say that we would abide by British law. 93%. But sadly, 27% said they had some sympathy with the criminals who perpetrated the killings in Charlie Hebdo. What was the headlines in the Telegraph and the Daily Mail? The quarter of Muslims support terrorism. Not the 95, not the 93. And so you find this negativity, this bad news about Muslims everywhere. In 2013, a study in The Independent showed that people felt 1 in 4 of the people asked felt that Islam is incompatible with British way of life. And in The Guardian, 4% of the 352 articles in 2010 published in this country, 4% were positive and 91% were negative about Muslims and Islam. Now, why did I start with this? It's gloomy, of course. It is not something that we'd like to hear. And I'm not going to stand here and say, the blame entirely is on the media or the governments or whoever. There's no doubt that they have some part and the share of the blame. And there's no doubt that there are people who have hijacked the beautiful teachings of the religion of Islam, a minority who have committed these indiscriminate killings of innocent civilians, who have targeted people, whether it's 9/11, 7/7, whether the massacres we see today in Iraq and Syria committed by the so-called ISIS or Daesh, whether it's in countries like Pakistan, whether it's in Bahrain or in Saudi or in Yemen, whether it's in different parts of the world in the name of Islam. No doubt these people have tried to get the attention, and they're the minority who have unfortunately tarnished in the minds of many the beautiful teachings of the religion. Yet, what I want to really speak about is the Muslim community ourselves. Because no community would advance and would progress and establishes itself anywhere without introspection and self-scrutinization. We've got to look at ourselves as a Muslim community. And in particular, I want to focus on this whole notion of mercy and love, in addition to the idea of education. Now, perhaps the Muslims and the non-Muslims may not be aware of this fact, that of course the book that the Muslims follow and see as the book of guidance is the Quran. Yes? More than 600 references are found in the Quran when it comes to the concept of mercy of God. 600. Not one, not two, not three. 600 references and quotations and indications and encouragements. Let me give you a few just to highlight how we have sometimes not focused on the right things when it comes to religion. For instance, you see, there are 3 points that I would like to focus on when it comes to this idea of the mercy of God and the love. Number 1 is our understanding of it. Number 2 is the application of it. And number 3, it's us speaking about it to others. Why do we have this increasing number of people who are somehow disillusioned with the teachings of Islam and the practice of the Muslims? Have we understood the mercy of God as it is stipulated quite clearly and categorically demonstrated in the Quran or not? The Quran says God the Almighty has created everyone due to His mercy. Fact number 1. Fact number 2. Out of all the verses, the greatest verse according to many scholars, Muslim scholars, is the first verse, in the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. The Quran describes over 140 attributes and divine characteristics that belong to God. And out of those, the Almighty begins the revelation and instructs the Muslims to conduct their affairs by remembering His name using what? The description of His mercy. In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Fact number 2. Fact number 3. The Quran says, كَتَبَ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ الرَّحْمَةِ. Allah has prescribed mercy upon Himself. It goes without any particular doubt that people may have. In fact, when we look at the glorious life of the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his holy progeny, what do you find? You find that, of course, we believe that he's a man of mercy, as were all the prophets, as were all those chosen by God, who would espouse love and respect and tolerance and understanding between faiths and communities. Yet it was interesting because I came across a story that one day there was a Bedouin who was next to the Prophet, and he was praying to God. And he was saying, "Oh God, you know this mercy of yours that I've heard so much about? I want this mercy to fall upon me, your Prophet, and no one else. I just want it for us two." And the Prophet would look at him and say, "You know this supplication that you've just done? This is a wrong supplication that will not be answered by God, because you're limiting that which is unlimited. You're limiting God's mercy to what? Two people. And God's mercy extends to all of His creation, to every single particle of existence. And it's there." Now, when we look at this concept, sometimes it defies belief. I remember once I was presenting a program on one of the satellite channels, and I was talking about this notion, and I had a caller from America, a non-Muslim friend. He called and said, "You know, with all respect, I'm flicking through channels, and I came across what you're saying, and it doesn't resonate. It doesn't click." And I said to him, "Why?" Live on television. I said to him, "Why?" He said, "Because you're talking about love and peace and mercy and your Prophet and the Quran, and yet all I see is bloodshed and killing. All I see is animosity and hatred. How does that go hand in hand?" And you know, sometimes I was looking at this aspect of animal rights in Islam. You know, sometimes we forget, when we look at the teachings of the religion, we sometimes forget even some elements which highlight the mercy that is being emphasized. Just to give you an example, that Muslim jurists, they come forward and say, from their understanding of the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet, as far as animal rights are concerned, Muslims have to perform what is known as ritual ablution. They have to wash certain parts of the body before prayers. And of course, when there's water, they have to use water. If there's no water, they have to use soil. And they perform an act known as tayammum, using soil as a symbolic means to cleanse themselves before communicating with the Lord, communicating with God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, it is mentioned in the books of many jurists, Muslim jurists, for centuries. Now imagine you have just a small cup of water that's enough for you to perform this ritual ablution. And you have a thirsty animal, like a dog or a cat, who is what? Wants that water. The jurists say you should give the water to the animal and instead use the soil. So you should prefer... Enough people know this kind of thing. Not enough people know that the Prophet once saw a man hurting a cat. He said, if you die in this state, you don't go to heaven. Not enough people know. And unfortunately, even starting with that element and moving across the whole notion of the Quran about the respect of every innocent life and soul of human beings. Now, this month of Ramadan, my dear friends, is considered as a month of mercy. It's a month that we Muslims believe God's forgiveness encapsulates the believers, encapsulates those who strive and give and sacrifice. This month is a month of generosity, is the month of kindness. This month reminds us about examples in Islamic history of people who today should stand as role models to demonstrate for the Muslim community how we should understand the concept of mercy and how we should inculcate it within the presence and the existence and the teachings when it comes to our children and our youngsters. Because let me tell you this. Yesterday I was talking to the MP for Kingston upon Thames, Member of Parliament for Kingston in London. And he's telling me, how do we stop the radicalization? There's widespread increase in people being brainwashed, people wanting to join these terror groups and so on. How do we stop it? Well, one element about it is education. There is absolutely no doubt. And education must start from a young age. Let me give you an indication of how Islam specifically, and I'm sure and I know other faiths focus so much on the concept of education. The first word we believe that was revealed to the Prophet was read. And the Prophet himself, as far as gender, says that education and seeking knowledge is obligatory upon men and women. He says seek knowledge even if it's in China. At that time, traveling to China was not easy at all. Neither it is today, but still an emphasis upon the importance of seeking knowledge. In fact, we have the Quran coming forward and saying that when it comes to seeking knowledge, when it comes to education, people who know and people who don't know are not the same. And God elevates those who have knowledge in higher status than those who do not. And by the way, when we talk about education, it is not only religious education that we're speaking about. We're talking about secular education, and we're also referring to religious education. Because we believe an individual who is a faithful believer strives to become the best that they can be in their society, in serving humankind, in offering assistance to others. And that requires them to be of the level of understanding, cognizance and education that is expected of them. And I want to just give you, before I end, 2 examples of individuals associated with the month of Ramadan. That you know, today we are, as a Muslim community living in this country, blessed to be happily coexisting with the other faiths and other communities we must look up to. The first, of course, without a shadow of a doubt, as the greatest role model, we believe, is the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whom the Quran says that God sent him for exactly the purpose of spreading peace and love and mercy. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And you know what? We've had enough of people just talking the talk, because people like the Prophet walked the walk too. It is not just about claiming this. There are too many people who falsely claim they follow the teachings of Islam, but they are as far away from Islam as that anyone could ever be, and have usurped it and have abused its name. Now, the Prophet, on the year 8 after migration, in the month of Ramadan, that's why there's a close link to this month and his illustrious personality, established something that these monstrous enemies of humanity known as ISIS and Daesh don't want you to know. They don't want you to read what the Prophet did in the month of Ramadan 8 years after migration. He led an army towards the city of Mecca because he had a peace treaty with the clan of Quraysh. He had said, you allow us to spread our faith and we won't interfere with you. We're in the city of Medina, you're in Mecca. There were tribes aligned to each group. But of course, his enemies had violated the pact. They had killed some of the tribes that were with the Prophet. So what did he do? He said, fine, you have violated it. Now we have no option. So he takes his army, approximately 10,000 Muslim soldiers, towards Mecca. But you know how many people were killed in the conquest of Mecca? 0. Nobody! The Prophet entered Mecca peacefully, without a single drop of blood being shed, despite having the opportunity to massacre, but he didn't. He entered with the full humility that you expect from this great individual, lowering his head. And when he entered, do you know what the people in Mecca did to him? They had taken his and the Muslims' properties. They had tortured him. They had killed his companions. They had committed all kinds of crimes against him. And he had the option of retribution. He had the chance to seek revenge and vengeance against them. But he looked at them and says, go, you're all free. Go. And you know, this was something that some people didn't like around him. One man came, said, today is the day of vengeance and bloodshed. He looked at him and said, come down from the stage. Today is the day of love and mercy. That was the Prophet. Yes? And I want to tell you about another man. A man whom 20 to 25% of the Muslim world know much about. A man who anyone who has discovered him has fallen in love with his brilliant personality and his great legacy. An individual who Kofi Annan in 2012, whilst the Secretary General of the United Nations quoted him and said, if you want to understand justice and how to govern, look at this man. A man who was struck and was martyred in the month of Ramadan whilst peacefully praying to his Lord. But a man who looked at his killer and said to those around him, do not harm him if I'm still alive. Give him exactly what you give me from my food and my drink. That individual is the closest human being to the Prophet and his best student, and an individual who we believe is his successor, Ali ibn Abi Talib. Peace and blessings be upon him. Now what it is about human beings is that we like to see examples. We like to relate to individuals. Today, amongst this increasing atmosphere of hatred and animosity, we need to present individuals who are full of love and mercy and care and attention and respect and tolerance to others. Let me tell you about this individual, Ali ibn Abi Talib. Everything that he learned was from the Prophet of Islam, because he was the closest individual to him and his best student. And he would walk in the streets as the caliph, as the ruler. Ali would walk in the streets and he would hear the cries in a house. He would say to the man walking with him by the name of Qambar, why are people crying under my leadership? He knocks on the door. A widow opens the door. Says, why are your children crying and screaming? She says to him, O Commander of the Faithful, they haven't had food for a while. And I've placed this huge bowl with water under the fire to give them an illusion that there's food. But I don't have any food. Now Ali ibn Abi Talib does what? He is the leader. He says to his friend, Qambar, let's go. He goes home. He picks up the flour and the dates and whatever he has. He brings it. He prepares the food for these orphans. And then he plays with them. He sits there and plays with them until they're laughing and smile. So Qambar says to him, Oh, Master of the Faithful, I understand why you fed them. I understand why you gave them the food and the water. But I don't know why you played with them. Does it befit you to sit there and play with the children? He says, when I came and first saw them, they were crying. I wanted to leave them and they're smiling. I wanted to leave them in the state of happiness. He walks in the streets and he finds a beggar. He asks, why is this man begging? They say, Ali, he's a Christian. He says, so what? He sits next to him. He says, stand up with me. He takes him. He feeds him. He gives him the money. And he says, whilst he was young, you used him to work. Now you treat him like this? And what does he do? He's leading an army against an individual who wanted to cause corruption and spread evil by the name of Muawiyah. And Muawiyah's army had stopped the water from getting to Ali ibn Abi Talib's army. So the Ali's army are now thirsty. They want the water. They can't get it. Because Muawiyah said, don't give them a single drop. Let them die out of thirst. So what does he do? He's forced to attack to recapture the water in the famous battle known as Siffin. He attacks. They get the water. Now his soldiers, his companions say, now we'll make them die of thirst. He says, absolutely not. We now give them water. They say, oh Master, oh Commander of the Faithful, they did this to us. He says, we don't do the same to them. You give them the water. He fed his own enemies with water and quenched their thirst. This type of mercy, this type of love, this type of understanding and respecting the humanity element is what people of all faiths, especially the Muslim community, we need to begin to understand and teach our children. Importantly, from a young age, we should instill in our children, in our youth, love and respect and mercy to others. If they claim to be the followers of the Prophet, if they claim to be followers of Ali ibn Abi Talib and the family of Ali ibn Abi Talib, who are the embodiments and exemplified mercy like no one else, then they should be the most merciful with others. They should be the most loving to others. I would like to leave you with a quote and a set of teachings from the famous book Nahjul Balagha, which is the maxims and the letters of this great individual Ali ibn Abi Talib when it comes to governance, which was used by Kofi Annan. In his letter 53 to his governor in Egypt, Malik al-Ashtar, he says to him, develop in your heart feelings of love for your people and let it be the source of kindness and blessings. Don't behave with them like a barbarian. Don't take that which belongs to them, because people are of two kinds, either your brother in faith or equal in humanity. And you know this sentence? Something that has mesmerized people, Muslims and non-Muslims alike, like George Jodak, the famous Christian author of a book by the name of Ali, The Voice of Human Justice. This individual, he's not a Muslim. He says himself, in Lebanon, I was researching people in history and I came across Ali ibn Abi Talib. I wanted to know more and more. And I started reading this book, Nahjul Balagha. And I drowned in this book, in this sea of this wonderful text that highlights the seeking of knowledge, highlights the importance of understanding, highlights community cohesion and love and respect. He says, eventually I came to author this book and he named it The Voice of Human Justice. And let me tell you this, Do you know who first published the book? Many of the Muslim community will be surprised. The Christian community in Lebanon were the first to publish this book. They said, we'll publish it. Not because the author was Christian, but because what the values and what the principles that were there are one that are shared by humanity. Today, my dear friends, there's no doubt that we say not in my name. What is being perpetrated in the Middle East, the crimes, the killings, the atrocities, what we have here as far as the hatred that some minority groups within the Muslim community are showing, we reject them categorically. And the best way forward is what? Is for wonderful programs like this. I congratulate Baab-Ul-Ilm and all the centers around this country who are striving to increase community cohesion and respect and love amongst faith groups. And you know, just close from here in Bradford, recently one of the mosques was desecrated in a sectarian attempt to create conflict between the Muslim sects, the Sunnis and the Shias. And we saw a wonderful response, which we should see extended towards community relations between all faiths. Yes, the Sunnis and the Shias came together in a show of defiance and unity to send a strong message to the sectarian people and to those who are trying to create this unity, that you cannot break us, that we're one. And as a community, we stay together, united. And that's the mission. Under the mercy and the love of God that has been emphasized categorically in the scriptures, in the teachings of Jesus and Moses and Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon them all. As followers, we should be of individuals who ooze with this love and respect of the other, so that we can continue to respect each other and live happily side by side. Thank you very much for your attention. I pray to the Almighty God to increase the love and the strength and the bond amongst people of all faiths, of all denominations, and allow us to stand against extremism and those who have hijacked all faiths and have hijacked humanity, and to be able to increase love amongst people. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Sheikh Mohammed, for those insightful and thought-provoking words. I'm sure many of you here would like to discuss with Sheikh further, and there will be time for that over dinner. So moving on, next I would like to present to you a phrase. And that phrase is faith in action. What does that mean, faith in action? To practice your faith, what does it mean? To me, it might mean sitting here in a mosque in prayer. To some of our guests, it might mean doing the same at a synagogue or church, a temple or a gurdwara, or simply spending quality time with your family at home. And of course, all these are examples in one way or another of practicing your faith. But what else? This is a question that we've been asking ourselves at Baab-Ul-Ilm over the last few years. And over those few years, inspired at times and assisted by our friends and neighbours, here at Baab-Ul-Ilm we've tried to expand our definition of what faith in action actually means. Indeed, look at today's event. We're all living examples of that. 10 years ago, we never had events like this. And this makes me optimistic about the future. But there are some more examples too. I'm going to hand over now to the Baab-Ul-Ilm chairman, Rasul Balmani, to tell you more. But before I do, there's a short video that we'd like to share with you. Giving out this water that is something that is so fundamental that every human being needs has been such a great symbolic gesture, and people have taken it on board and they have really connected.
I'm the Rabbi of Sinai Synagogue, and we've had for a decade or more now a wonderful working relationship with the Baab-Ul-Ilm, and it's a pleasure to be able to join another faith community in its outreach to general society to actually work together and lessen misunderstanding and increase cooperation.
Thank you for inviting me today. It's wonderful to see everybody here. And it's wonderful to see people in the mosque as well. Welcome to you, to everybody that's come.
Yay, hit some dough.
But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so gracious that He thanks you for thanking Him. He is so kind and compassionate. This is why I say, inshallah, tonight you'll leave with a paradigm shift.
Shaitan is your enemy. Inna ash-shaytana lakum aduwwun mubin. Shaitan is your obvious enemy. In fact, our worst enemy is Shaitan.
How can you even begin to talk about this man who is a towering personality, a personality that is beyond human comprehension? It is impossible for a human being to comprehend the status of Ali ibn Abi Talib.
Now, following the recent killings in Paris, the British government wrote to Muslim leaders in the UK asking for their help in dealing with radicalisation. They told imams that they had a responsibility to explain what it meant to be a British Muslim.
So, today, more than 20 mosques will open their doors as part of a Visit My Mosque Day, offering tea, cake and an insight into what goes on in a Muslim place of worship. Well, Rasul Bamani is from a mosque in Leeds, which is taking part. And thank you very much for coming in to join us this morning. It's going to be a busy day for you.
The most important thing is to have discussion around those sensationalized topics such as jihad.
Tonight we are here to associate ourselves with those who are oppressed and being oppressed by Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS and all other terrorist groups.
But if you actually understand these scriptures, what it's saying is that God has sent us here as an ambassador. So when you see a person who comes in, who's in need of your help, and if you are able to help that person, then you should.
Learned scholars, distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, peace be upon you. We have gathered here today to celebrate two main events. The first one is breaking of fast together, and the second one is the opening of the Baab-Ul-Ilm Learning Centre. Ramadan is a time in which families, communities come together for iftar and prayers. It is also the month in which the Quran was revealed to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It is therefore a time when Muslims reflect upon the wisdom and guidance that comes from faith, and the responsibility that we human beings have to one another and to God. As Muslims, we honor each day of Ramadan as a day of patient endurance during fasting, and each night as a night of gratitude through prayers. It is a time to reinforce faith, compassion, and forgiveness, and perseverance through adversity. These practices remind us of the principles that we hold in common and Islam's role in advancing justice, peace, tolerance, and dignity of human beings. Sheikh mentioned what we learn from the various festivals within our religion. And here at the Baab-Ul-Ilm, Gateway to Knowledge, has opened up a whole host of actions. Some of those examples are that you can see. For example, the Ramzan harvest and the Paphras. We actually joined the Sinai Synagogue during a mitzvah celebration, and a representative of Paphras actually came down there and gave a presentation, and they said that we require basic essentials for the refugees who need this. And the youth of this community got together and decided to celebrate the Prophet's birthday, that to present their ask, their donate gifts, basic essentials to Paphras. So that's one example of faiths working together, and how the births or the principles that the Prophet stood for were advanced by the youth of the Baab-Ul-Ilm Centre. The second activity that was undertaken, and this was taken by the children of this centre, during the commemorations of Muharram, when the Prophet's grandson was slaughtered, and water played an important part. Like Sheikh said, that even in that battle, the enemies of Islam stopped the water flow to the Prophet's grandson. And the kids of this centre, when they came to mosque and they saw that, and when they saw that 1 billion people are in need of clean water, they said they wanted to do something. And these kids, in the range of 7 to 15, raised £1,400 and got 2 derelict wells into use to provide clean water in Monza, Africa. The final example of what Islam teaches us, the responsibility that we as centres like the Baab-Ul-Ilm have, is to advocate, is to open our doors to the wider public. And that we did in February during the Visit My Mosque Day. It was attended by a number of people and it was welcomed. So these are some of the activities you saw in the presentation and you've seen on the slides that we have done to fulfill our responsibilities, to gather that compassion and mutual feeling. The second event is the opening of the Learning Centre. And like Sheikh said, the biggest weapon against terror groups are education. If the child knows what's right and what's wrong, he will then act accordingly. And to that end, we have invested in a multi-purpose centre which will be used as classrooms for the madrasa, for the children of this centre. Will also be used as a conference facility for the wider community, and also for the 3 faiths meetings that are undertaken between St. John's, Sinai, the United Hebrew Centre across the road. So something that we can actually use to facilitate our internal meetings. The cost of the centre was in the region of £100,000. There still is a shortfall. So I look at this side of the community now. We're still a shortfall, so those people who can and are able to donate, please see any of the committee members at the end of this program. But inshallah, what we will do is that we will, after the prayers, we will go downstairs and there will be an opening ceremony. Finally, I'd like to thank you all for coming and gracing this occasion with your presence. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rasul. So moving on, our next speaker is the President of the Council of European Jamaats. This is the umbrella organisation of which the Baab-Ul-Ilm Centre is a member. If you prefer to think in footballing terms, they're UEFA and we're the FA. However, their aims are a little bit more charitable. They help, support, facilitate, and coordinate many of our activities, and we are privileged to have them represented here today by the President of COEG, Dr. Hussein Jiwa, who I would like to invite to say a few words.
In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessing be on all upon you. It's my pleasure to be a part of today's big iftar, and another occasion is the opening of the Baab-Ul-Ilm education wing, whatever it is, extension. I'm delighted to be able to share this event with my friends and my peers from the wider community. The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, tells us the benefits of Ramadan by describing it as a month of patience. And the reward of patience is heaven. It is a month of charity, a month in which a believer's sustenance is increased. He goes on to say, whoever gives food to a fasting person to break his fast shall have his sins forgiven, and he will be saved from the fire of hell. Ramadan is an auspicious month, but not only for Muslims. The great scholar, member of the House of Holy Prophet, and respected religious leader, Imam Jafar Sadiq, peace be upon him. In his famous book, Al-Kafi, he has been quoted to have said that the Torah was revealed on the 6th day of the month of Ramadan. The Bible on the 12th night of the month, the Psalms on the 18th night of the month, and the Quran on the 9th of Qadr. For many, this month is a time for reflection, physical and spiritual purification, and increased charity. In 2013, the Times reported that Muslims were Britain's most generous charitable donors, topping a poll of religious groups that donate to charity, with a large amount of money being collected annually during this month. However, charity is not only restricted to financial contributions. Muslims also use this month as an opportunity to develop community bonds, where people from all backgrounds come together with a common purpose and break bread together. Food is something that transcends beliefs and allows people to connect and engage with one another. And that is exactly what the Big Iftar initiative facilitates. By encouraging Muslims organizations to welcome their friends and neighbors, inviting them to join in opening the fast, they're able to share the spirit of Ramadan, forge new friendships, and enhance community cohesion. It has been said that the best way to challenge discrimination and break the divide of intolerance is through dialogue, where understanding and respect for different beliefs and opinions flourish. Similarly, it allows existing relationships to develop further and strengthens the bond of brotherhood and sisterhood amongst the neighbors. The Big Iftar has now grown beyond Islamic institutions, with schools and other faith groups partaking. Many may know the story of Leeds Centre in Muswell Hill. They were victims of arson attack following the tragic Woolwich incident. Their Jewish neighbors took them in and encouraged them to use the synagogue for their services. This relationship continues till today, with the synagogue hosting an annual iftar for the people of all faiths. With examples such as this, our faith in humanity strengthens, and we pray that such work continues over the years, with greater opportunities for collaboration with different communities. In this holy month, your sincere prayers, your devotion, and your faith in God will make you a better human to serve this society with the wisdom and truth. Happy Ramadan to you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jiwa, for those words. So, for those of you who have a program, we're almost at the end of today's formal proceedings. However, before we move on, I'd just like to take a slight time out from the program that you have in your hands. I won't take up too much of your time, I promise. Organizations like ours mosques, churches, synagogues, community centres. They run on the goodwill of people. People come, they partake in activities, they contribute in many ways, and they are the lifeblood of communities like ours. However, for every organisation, there are a few select individuals. If you have one in yours, you're lucky. These people are the drivers, motivators, leaders and doers, all rolled into one. These are the people that go above and beyond what most people do. And they do it because they can and they want to. Without these people, things would grind to a halt. We are lucky enough here to have such a person at the Baab-Ul-Ilm Centre. I know for a fact that the amount of effort he puts in to ensure the day-to-day running of this place is unparalleled. Often this is a great personal sacrifice. His efforts have been behind most of what we have achieved as a community here over the past 10 years. Most recently, this has culminated in the building of our extension, the Baab-Ul-Ilm Learning Centre, which you've heard about. Now, there's not much that we can do to repay these efforts. And I know people who do these things don't expect anything in return. However, the least we can do is recognize the work. And as a committee of the Baab-Ul-Ilm, we thought that it was only right to do that today. So I would just like to request Sheikh Muhammad Al-Hili to come forward to present a small token to the individual that I'm talking about. It's nothing too fancy. It's a token of appreciation from the community at Baab-Ul-Ilm. And of course, if you hadn't guessed it already, I'm talking about our chairman, Rasul Balmani. So could you come forward, please? He didn't know about this, so he's smiling at me now, saying I don't want to come forward. You don't have a choice.
He looks definitely surprised.
Please come forward. Rasul has been, single-handedly project managing the extension whilst trying to run his own business, look after his own family. Today, I think he's been coordinating about 6 WhatsApp groups, about 50 people. And, I'm not just saying it, but without people like that, events like this wouldn't happen. The extension wouldn't have been built. Yes, we all as a community, we come together, we donate the money, but someone needs to do the dirty work of standing up and trying to get people to do it as well. So it's just a small token to say thank you, and everyone appreciates it, whether we say it out loud or not. Yeah.
Firstly, this is a total surprise to me. I wasn't expecting this at all. Secondly, there was no need for this. I'm just a facilitator. I just come here and do what everyone's responsibility should be. So thank you for those kind words. But truly, this was not necessary. The real workers, the real people are the people who attend this center. Because a general is never successful without an army. And we have an army here. We have youths, we have elders, and we have people who make this possible. Not me, it's you guys. And this award should actually be given to you guys. Because whenever I've come up here, and whenever I've asked for something, you guys have delivered it, not me. So thank you so much, but the real deserving people for this is you people there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Noble words as always. If you think we're going to start calling you General from now on, there's another thing coming. Chairman's bad enough. So that brings us to the end of our formal program for now. So presently, we will break for prayer and ablution. In the meantime, our guests can allow us to capture any reflections they may have had and the volunteers will, in the gents and ladies, will guide you in doing this. They will then accompany you down to the marquee for some drinks and bitings, and then we'll have the opening of the extension and then dinner. So it's been an absolute joy having all of you here today. Thank you once again for all coming. I'm sure we'll meet again over dinner. Thank you very much.
If I can just say that how pleased I was to be here tonight, and whilst the ceremony was ongoing, I actually wrote down 3 or 4 words, and we heard the most powerful contribution from Sheikh Mohammed, and the 3 words I wrote down were peace and love and mercy. And it's such a powerful message because nobody could possibly have anything to say about those 3 words except they are the best words to use. And I think the 4th word, again, which came across very powerfully indeed, was the word education, and how important it is to make sure that people are educated into the kind of behaviour that encapsulates those previous 3 words. And really bringing this down to a local level, I and my 2 colleagues are local politicians and we act locally. We don't have any national power. And I think it's incumbent on us all to do what we can locally, and if enough of us do that in enough small areas and our local areas, then we can try to deliver peace and love and mercy and so on in our small ways, multiplied by thousands and millions of people. That can only be a force for as much good as we can possibly hope to achieve.
We'll take just a few minutes to officially open the new building. So in order to do that, could I request all the scholars to come forward, and also our guests who are representing different faiths and the councillors, just to come forward, assemble in this front area, please. Thank you all for coming forward. So we'll proceed to the opening. If Sheikh, would you just like to say a few words of supplication before we do that, and then we will ask Dr. Jiwa to officially cut the ribbon and pronounce the opening of the new centre.
صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل اللهم على محمد وآله
If you recite aloud, Nare Salawat, please. Excellent, thank you. So the centre is now officially open.
I'm Monsignor Michael McQuinn of the Roman Catholic community of Leeds. I'd just like to say I've been very touched by the very warm welcome received here tonight and the very informative nature of the evening. It's been a privilege to have been invited to join the community at this, the most sacred time of the year, and to foster bonds of understanding and fraternity. So, very big thank you.
It's been a great honour to be invited here this evening. I've really enjoyed your hospitality, as usual. There's 2 things that have struck me this evening. One is the importance of education, and the other is the importance of each faith getting to know people of other faiths, and it's almost as important as an article of our belief. In the past, people used to live in different areas with their different faiths. You could ignore them if you wanted to. Now we're in one city where different faiths were together, and if we're going to be convincing in any way about faith, we've got to be seen to be getting on with each other. There's so much to learn and so many different ways of understanding our own faith if we reach to one another.
Hi, a couple of phrases that your keynote speaker, Sheikh Al-Hili, mentioned certainly struck a chord with me. He said in this month of mercy, Ramadan, that all of us shouldn't just talk the talk of mercy, but walk the walk of mercy. And the best way of doing that, and I couldn't agree more, is to know and to emulate the role models of history. And all the main religions of the world, of course, have got role models throughout history. And we have to know, and our youth have to know, exactly the conduct and the way those people would lead their lives. And the second thing that was quite obvious from this evening was that Baab-Ul-Ilm have empowered youth by investing in youth and educating in youth. And that has got to be the way forward for all religions. Unfortunately, we have a situation where people who purport to adhere to their religions don't really know enough, and they don't know all the beautiful aspects of the main world religions. So I'd like to thank everybody here for walking the walk by organising this marvellous event and inviting us, your friends. It's a marvellous learning centre you have here, and we all do hope that it achieves all its aims. Many, many thanks from myself, Hilton Laurie, Leeds Jewish Representative Council. Thank you so much.